Sometimes the people who change our lives are the ones we never see again. A glance, a word, a moment, and then they're gone. But something stays with you. Something shifts. Welcome to another episode of Postcard English Stories, where real life stories meet real emotion and where you learn English through the most powerful teacher of all, the heart. Today's story is about an ordinary day and an extraordinary act of kindness from someone I never met before and never saw again. This is A Stranger's Kindness. Have you ever had a moment in your life when you felt completely alone? Not the kind of alone where you're physically by yourself, but the deeper kind. The kind of loneliness where even in a crowded room, you feel like nobody sees you. Like the world is moving on without you and you're stuck behind glass watching. That was me just a few years ago. I don't even remember what day of the week it was. Maybe a Thursday. But I remember the feeling. It had been a long, heavy day, the kind that starts wrong and just never gets better. I had missed the bus that morning, spilled coffee on my white shirt, and gotten chewed out at work for something that wasn't really my fault. You know, the kind of day where it's not one big disaster, just 100 tiny paper cuts that leave you feeling raw. By the time evening came, I felt completely drained. Emotionally, physically, mentally, I hadn't eaten. I hadn't spoken to anyone beyond the usual hi and thanks. I was carrying a bag that felt heavier than usual, but really, it wasn't the bag. It was everything else I'd been carrying that no one could see. The worst part. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to cry. I didn't even want to feel anything anymore. I just wanted the day to be over. The train station was crowded that night. Everyone was rushing. Nobody looked up. Eyes glued to their phones, feet moving fast, headphones in. That kind of modern loneliness, where you're surrounded by people yet invisible. And I remember thinking I could disappear right now and nobody would notice. Not in a dramatic way, just in that tired, quiet kind of way when life feels too loud and you feel too small. That's when I saw her. She was probably in her 60s. Silver hair, soft eyes, scarf wrapped neatly around her neck. Not fancy, not flashy, just calm. Present, she was sitting alone on a bench, not looking at her phone, just observing the world like she had all the time in the world. I wouldn't have noticed her if it weren't for what happened next. As I walked past, eyes low, shoulders slumped, my bag suddenly ripped. Just like that. The strap gave way and everything inside spilled onto the platform papers. My water bottle, earbuds, receipts, loose change. It was loud. Embarrassing. And of course, everyone looked for half a second, and then turned away. Everyone except her. She didn't hesitate. She didn't pause. She got up, walked over, knelt down beside me, and started helpin'. No words at first, just gentle hands picking up my things. Reaching under benches. Gathering my mess with quiet kindness. And for some reason that broke me. I looked up, eyes already full, and she gave me this small, soft smile, not the kind that says I pity you, the kind that says I see you. And then in the gentlest voice she said, "It's okay, sweetheart, happens to all of us." 7 words, that's all. But it was like something opened inside me, because in that moment, that one simple human moment, I felt seen. Not judged, not fixed, just seen. She helped me repack my bag, tied the broken strap into a loose knot, and patted it like it was good as new. Then she looked me in the eye and said, "You're doing better than you think. Be gentle with yourself." And then just like that, She turned, walked away, and disappeared into the crowd. I never got her name. I never saw her again. But I remember her. I remember everything. Because that night when I got home, I didn't feel invisible anymore. I didn't feel okay. Not yet. But I felt like maybe one day I could be. And that maybe there was still goodness in the world. Still people who notice. Still reasons to keep going. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't a miracle. It was just one moment. One stranger. One unexpected act of kindness that reminded me I wasn't as alone as I thought. That's the story I want to share with you today. Because the world feels heavy sometimes. And in those moments, it's easy to believe nobody cares. But maybe someone will. Someone you don't know. Someone you'll never see again. And sometimes that's all it takes to feel human again. Looking back that night at the train station wasn't just a bad day. It was the tipping point after a long season of quiet struggle, a season where everything felt heavy, but nothing looked wrong from the outside. People often talk about burnout in terms of work, but what I was going through felt deeper than that. It wasn't just my job. It was me. My spirit. My sense of meaning. My ability to care. At the time, I was working full-time at a company that looked great on paper, good salary, decent benefits, a title I used to be proud of. But inside, I was falling apart. I would wake up each morning with this knot in my stomach, not from nerves, but from emptiness. I'd shower, get dressed, pack my things, all while feeling like a ghost wearing a mask. My apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful but hollow. The TV would be on in the background most days, just so the silence wouldn't swallow me. But even then, nothing really landed. Music didn't move me like it used to. Books sat untouched. Food was fuel, not pleasure. I stopped reaching out to friends, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to be around them anymore. It's hard to explain sadness when you can't even explain it to yourself. So I withdrew. I told people I was just busy. And slowly the invitations stopped coming. I didn't blame anyone. If anything, I blamed myself. Maybe I'm just weak, I told myself. Other people have it worse. I should be grateful. I have things. A job, a roof. What right do I have to feel like this? And that guilt, that voice that said I wasn't allowed to feel what I felt, made everything worse. Each day became survival, one foot in front of the other. Smile when needed, numb out when possible. Try not to fall apart in public. And I got good at pretending, good at answering. How are you with I'm fine? Good at saying I'm just tired, when really I didn't even know who I was anymore. The truth was, I was lonely. Not just the I haven't seen my friends in a while kind of lonely, but the kind where you forget what it feels like to be understood, to be known without having to explain yourself, to be seen even for a second. And that's why that moment, that one simple gesture from a stranger broke something open in me. Because before it happened, I had convinced myself that nobody noticed. That if I disappeared tomorrow, the world would keep turning and nothing would change. That kindness wasn't real anymore. But all that quiet pain, all those invisible weights had been building up for months before that night. And I didn't realize how badly I needed someone to remind me that I still mattered, even if just for a moment. That's what makes what happened next so powerful, because when you carry silence for long enough, even the softest voice can feel like thunder. It all happened in less than 5 minutes. But those 5 minutes have stayed with me for years. I was walking through the train station, exhausted and half aware of my surroundings. It was one of those long, echoing platforms. People rushing past announcements playing overhead, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above. Everyone looked busy, determined, distracted. And I felt like a ghost walking among the living. My bag, a worn canvas tote I'd used for years, had been holding on by a thread for weeks. I knew the strap was fraying. I knew it would give out eventually. But that night I just didn't have the energy to care. And then it snapped. The strap tore clean through, and everything I was carrying scattered across the cold tile floor. My water bottle rolled away. Papers fluttered like leaves. My phone hit the ground with a loud thud. A pen cracked in half. And me. I just stood there, frozen. For a few seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't react. I just stared at the mess, blinking. People passed by. A few looked. No one stopped, and honestly, I didn't blame them. We live in a world where everyone's in a rush, where looking away feels safer than stepping in. And I had gotten so used to being invisible that this moment just felt like proof. See, even when I fall apart, no one notices, but then someone did. I saw a pair of worn leather boots stop in front of me. Slowly, carefully, a woman bent down. Maybe in her 60s, short gray hair tucked under a knitted hat, a soft wool scarf around her neck. There was something calm about her, like the noise of the world didn't touch her, the same way it touched the rest of us. Without saying a word, she began picking up my things. She moved gently, patiently. She picked up a sheet of paper that had slid under the bench, found the cap of my pen, handed me my cracked phone like it was something valuable, like I was something valuable. Still silent, she knelt down and reached for my bag. She examined the torn strap, then looked up at me with kind eyes and said, "Looks like it's had a long day too." That one sentence, simple, light-hearted, kind, broke the fog in my brain. I laughed, a small, surprised laugh. The first one in weeks, maybe months, and then I felt it, the burn behind my eyes. That slow, familiar swell of tears. I opened my mouth to say something. Maybe thank you, maybe I'm sorry. But before I could speak, she gently tied the broken strap into a temporary knot, tested it with a small tug, and said, "There you go. Not perfect, but it'll hold." She handed the bag to me, then looked me straight in the eyes. Not with pity, not with worry, just understanding. And then she said something I'll never forget. "You're going to be okay, maybe not today, but you will." That was it. No lecture, no questions, no attempt to fix me, just presence, just kindness, just a stranger who saw someone struggling and chose to care anyway. After that, she stood up, gave me the smallest smile, and walked away into the crowd. No name, no goodbye, just gone. But her words stayed. They still stay. In a world that often feels cold and fast and disconnected, that woman showed me something I had forgotten. Kindness doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be grand. Sometimes the softest gestures speak the loudest, and sometimes the people who change us forever are the ones we never even get the chance to thank. When she walked away, I just stood there for a while, frozen bag clutched tightly in my hands, the knot she tied still warm from her touch. I watched the crowd swallow her up. One second she was there, and the next gone. And yet, somehow it felt like something of her stayed with me. I sat down on the bench she had just left and let myself breathe. Not the shallow kind of breathing I'd been doing all day, but the deep, shaky kind that comes when your body finally realizes it's safe to exhale. The tears came quietly, not loud, not messy, just soft and steady the way water leaks from a roof that's been holding back the rain for too long. And I wasn't crying because I was sad. I was crying because for the first time in a long time someone had seen me. Not because they had to, not because they knew me, but simply because I was there and because I mattered. It was such a small moment, so ordinary, really. But when you've been hurting in silence, the smallest kindness can feel like a miracle. She didn't know what I was going through. She didn't ask. She didn't try to solve anything. She just showed up with presence, with gentleness, with humanity. And that changed everything. Because what I realized sitting there on that cold bench in a crowd of strangers was that pain doesn't always need a cure. Sometimes it just needs witnessing. Sometimes what we need most isn't advice. It's acknowledgement. A nod, a touch of warmth in the middle of a cold day. Her words kept echoing in my head. You're going to be okay. Maybe not today, but you will. No one had said that to me in a long time. I hadn't even said it to myself. And hearing it from someone who owed me nothing, somehow that made it even more powerful. Because in that moment, I believed her. Not completely, not forever, but enough to get through the night. Enough to walk home with a little more lightness in my chest. Enough to look up at the sky and feel, just for a second, that the world wasn't entirely dark and that was everything. That's the thing about kindness. It doesn't always come in the form we expect. It doesn't have to be big or loud or poetic. Sometimes it's a stranger on a train platform tying the strap of your broken bag and unknowingly tying something back together inside of you too. I never got her name, but I remember her eyes, her voice, her presence. And I carry that moment with me in quiet hours, in hard days, in the way I now try to show up for others. Because when you've been saved by a stranger's kindness, you start to understand just how much the smallest things matter. Something shifted after that night. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't wake up the next day a brand new person. The heaviness didn't vanish. The loneliness didn't magically disappear. But something inside me had cracked open in the gentlest way, and through that small crack, a little light started to get in. For the first time in a long while, I started paying attention to small things, to moments, to people. I began noticing the way sunlight came through my kitchen window in the mornings. I started listening when someone said, "How are you really listening?" And sometimes even answering honestly. And most importantly, I began to believe that I wasn't as invisible as I had once felt. It wasn't a complete transformation. It was slow, subtle, like thawing ice. But I carried her words with me. You're going to be okay. Maybe not today, but you will, and they became something of a mantra. A quiet promise I'd whisper to myself when the days still felt too heavy. And something else happened too. I started seeing other people the way she had seen me. That man on the train fumbling with his groceries, I offered him my seat. The girl at the cafe who looked like she hadn't slept in days, I smiled. The cashier who seemed tired and a little short with everyone, I said, "Thank you, I hope your day gets better." Not because I'm some saint, but because I remembered how it felt to be at your lowest and have someone simply show up for you without needing a reason. That one moment, that one stranger reminded me that kindness is a choice. One we can make daily, one that often costs us nothing but means everything to someone else. And here's what surprised me most. The more I looked outward, the more I began to feel whole again, helping someone else, smiling, listening, holding space, offering even the smallest kind word, started to become part of my healing. Not in a self-sacrificing way, but in a deeply human way. Because when you give kindness, you're also reminding yourself that you have value, that you have something to offer, that even if you're still figuring life out, you're part of something bigger than your pain. In a way, that woman didn't just help me clean up a broken bag. She helped me rebuild something inside myself. Something I hadn't even realized. I'd lost my connection to people, to hope, to being human. And to this day, whenever I feel that familiar weight pressing down again, I think back to that quiet, silver-haired woman on the train platform, and the 5 minutes that didn't fix everything, but changed enough to keep me going, enough to help me grow, enough to make me want to become that kind of stranger for someone else. Because kindness doesn't end in the moment it's given. It ripples, it echoes, it lingers. And sometimes it starts a chain reaction you'll never even get to see, but it matters. Every time to someone, I don't know who she was, I don't know where she came from, or where she was going, after she tied the strap of my broken bag and reminded me I wasn't alone. But I think about her often. And even though I never got to say it in person, I say it now quietly into this microphone, to a woman who will probably never hear it. Thank you for showing up, for seeing me, for reminding me that a tiny act of kindness can soften the hardest of days. And to you, dear listener, wherever you are, whatever you're going through, I want to say this. Maybe today you're the one who needs kindness. Maybe you're tired, heavy, worn down. If that's true, I hope truly deeply that someone shows up for you the way she showed up for me. Maybe not in a big movie scene kind of way, but in the quiet, gentle way that lets you exhale and remember you matter. And maybe you will be that someone for someone else. Because here's the thing, you don't have to be a hero. You don't need the right words. You don't even need to know the person. You just need to notice, to pause, to care even for a moment. A smile, a kind sentence, a helping hand, a warm look. They may seem small to you, but to someone else they could mean everything. Thank you for listening to this episode of Postcard English Stories. If this story touched something in you, please share it with someone who might need it, or with someone who once showed up for you. And if you've been carrying kindness in your heart, wondering when to share it, maybe today is that day. Until next time, be gentle, be present, be kind. You never know what your smallest gesture might become in someone else's story.